As Guyana sits on the economic and political crossroads, we speak to the nation's opinion leaders and decision makers to get their views on the challenges the country faces and the path it must take to achieve national development. Welcome to Nation Watch. Now here is your host Mervyn Williams, former member of the Guyana Parliament.
May 26, 2024, it's Independence Day in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Today marks our 58th independence anniversary. I extend greetings and best wishes to all Guyanese wherever you may be on the occasion of our 58th independence anniversary. Are we really independent in this country? It is very unfortunate that on this occasion, there's division, and there's division driven by the sitting government of the day. I want to share with you a photograph of the celebrations in Linden last evening. This is the first time in the history of Guyana that all the chiefs of the joint services in this country were caused to stand behind a person holding the title of president of the country as he presented an address to the nation on the occasion of independence. Never before has this been done. This is an ominous signal to all Guyanese wherever you may be. This is a show of force by the executive. This is intimidatory in its own right to the citizens of this country, in my humble view. And it is demeaning, belittling to the men in uniform who lead our joint services. It's rather unfortunate that it had to come to this on Independence Day in this country. And worse than that, the government took the independence celebration to Region 10, a place known to be a solid support base for the People's National Congress reform and all of its partners in the APNU-AFC, and excluded the regional administration, including the chairman of the region and the leaders of the municipality, including the mayor of the municipality of Linden, from all planning activities, and invited at the last moment only the regional chairman. The people of Linden rejected the way the government treated its elected officials. The people of Linden stayed away from the celebrations. We understand that close to 50 minibuses were used to transport people from all around as far as Crabwood Creek on the quarantine to Linden to beef up the support. Yes, of course, it's a national celebration. Yes, of course, people will come from every corner of our country to join in the independence celebration, but not this time. People were shuttled deliberately because the people of Linden rejected the government's treatment of its elected officials and its residents. And therefore, this was really a national event with the exclusion of the people of Region 10. And they reacted in a manner that they saw fit and appropriate in the circumstances. Today, we're going to be discussing oil and gas and sharing with you the information that we believe will be helpful to you in understanding what's happening and appreciating where we are. My guest today on Nation Watch is Dr. Vincent Adams, former head of the Environmental Protection Agency of Guyana, a gentleman who is qualified in and has worked internationally in the area of oil and gas. I'd like to welcome Dr. Vincent Adams to Nation Watch.
Thanks, Mervyn, and I, just like you, I would like to wish all of our Guyanese brothers and sisters happy independence, 58th anniversary of independence. I remember as a little boy in Christianborg, Linden, seeing the flag raised for independence, and it gave me goosebumps. So it's been 58 years, and we've come a long way, but it's I think we're going in an opposite direction. I as a little kid felt the sense of independence when that flag was raised and with the policies that were set by by our most distinguished leader, in my opinion, ever, the LFS Bornum. His policies made me and others felt really independent and empowered as a nation. And now I think things of starting in the wrong direction. You don't feel that sense of independence anymore, especially with the advent of oil. But let me say before we go on, um, in terms of that picture, it's really, when you look at that picture, it makes you cringe. The picture that you just put up there, because it's nothing but attempting to show strength, and it does the complete opposite to show that we have a weak president. If you are strong, there is no need for you to try attempt to exude that you're strong. It goes without saying by your actions, and the way you run the country. So you don't have to try to impress people that you're strong, and that's exactly what it is. And you brought up a good point. It's in Linden, and it's which is the stronghold of the opposition, and it's just is setting a warning to the Lindeners. You better behave yourself, or else here's what could be unleashed upon you. And in contrast to this picture, Morvin, we remember the picture with the mocking of the teachers on stage at their Congress. Why not, instead of these guys up there, you could have had the teachers, to show that education is very important in the nation, or have another profession, but you decide to choose to have these honorable men up there, force them up there to go and try to exude some that you're strong, and it makes you look weak.
That's what it does. So there's a different message for each section of society right there. Um, Dr. Adams, on the question of independence, Mr. Burnham is on record post independence as having said that we have attained political independence and we must aspire for the attainment of economic independence. Guyana has found oil. In normal circumstances, the immense wealth from oil should fuel not just the vision, but the agenda towards of a country towards full economic independence. It appears that we have a different position here in Guyana. Let's start from the contract position. Mr. Jagdeo has always been at pains to criticize the AP and UAFC for the contract, when everyone knows that it was the People's Progressive Party's in government in 1999 under Janet Jagan who signed that contract. But worse than that, it was a contract signed at a time, as you have said in a different place, when we had no idea what our oil reserves were. And it was unfortunate that exploration and production were lumped in the same contract, putting Guyana essentially on the back foot. Can we boast of economic independence from oil and gas as it is, or are we in a new form of colonialism?
Absolutely not. We cannot boast of independence, and that's what I was getting at in terms of us going in reverse direction. Um, in contrast to what the Honorable LFS Bornham had said, to give us that sense of independence. As I don't know if you could recall, even I remember when we had Home Oil Company who came into Guyana and discovered oil. I remember they had two wells that were flowing. I think that 400 barrels per day, in the Takatu Basin.
Yeah.
And Forbes told them it's either 51% or nothing.
Yeah.
No, but Of course, it didn't work out, but nevertheless, it gave us that sense that we were standing up to the imperial powers of the world. But in this case, the complete opposite happened. And then going to the contract, you rightly said, but let me repeat it because it's something, it's a propaganda that this government has been spreading, that this is a Raphael Trotman's contract. It's an absolute lie and nonsense. It is the same exact contract that was signed in 1999 by the Honorable Janet Jagan. The only change, basically the only fundamental change that was made to that contract was raising or doubling the royalty from 1% to 2%. Now, a big flaw in that contract, in the 1999 contract, that I see that up to recently, the vice president, somebody must have whispered in his ears that that he's got to say something to get out of it. The contract that was signed in 1999 included both an exploration and the production phases. Normally, these contracts are written in two phases, two separate types of contracts. You do a contract, you tell a company, you sign a contract with a company to come in and explore because you have no idea, no earthly idea what you're going to discover. They come in, they explore, and then after the exploration, based on that exploration data, if there's potential there, then you do production contract. What Janet Jagan and the PPP did, they lump both together. I noticed, as usual, he's never wanting for spreading lies and propaganda. The vice president, I think it's two press conferences ago, suddenly somebody must have told him. So now he's saying, well, the PNC, they signed the exploration contract, and when we had an opportunity for the production contract, we screwed it up. The PPP, it was the same exact contract. So it's absolute nonsense. But this contract, if you go beyond that, of course, is a production sharing contract. It's a bad type of contract. I've said that from day one. We have no capacity to manage such a contract. And now Exxon is dictating to us. They're dictating to us. They dictated to us in the contract. All we're getting is 14.5%. They're getting 85.5%. And now, and we've got all other issues, and they are running the country. Even Barjagdo himself said, when I questioned on the billboard, and they're brainwashing people, and this government standing up and allowing them to brainwash folks. On those billboards that they still have, it says that we're getting 52.5%. And we're not. We're getting 14.5%. And Barjagdo shockingly came out and said, he agreed with me when I was criticizing. He agreed with me. And when I tell him, well, then why not tell him to pull it down? He said he can't tell him to pull it down. If that is not colonialization, it's even worse than colonialization, because at least even our colonial masters would show us respect when they're lying to us in public. At least they would show us that respect to take it out of the public domain. But they're still keeping it there. Barjagdo himself, when he agreed with me that those billboards were wrong or a big fat lie, he himself said that if somebody comes into this country and see those billboards, they're going to believe that Exxon runs this country. Those were his words, Mervyn. He said that if strangers come into this country and look at those billboards, they're going to think that Exxon runs this country. So it didn't come from us saying that we colonized. It came from he himself, and still he would not tell them to pull down those billboards. He's afraid to tell them to pull down those billboards. As you remember, when he was in the opposition, the guy was jumping onto the rooftop saying he's going to renegotiate the contract. Oh, the coalition has sold out, the nation sold out our people's patrimony, and they're going to negotiate. The president himself, in an interview after he became the president, in an interview with Critic asked him a specific question: does that mean renegotiating the contract? He said, yes, renegotiating the contract. And now it's suddenly become the word is sanctity.
Yeah.
And on top of that, Mervyn, this guy has the nerve up to this his last press conference, I think the guy is denying that he ever said that they ever said that they were going to renegotiate this contract. But that's if nothing else, he learned very well from the Russians when he trained there, is to be a proper propagandistic master, because he's really good at it. So no, we are not. Exxon is running the country, which means that they have colonized the country.
And maybe this is why there was no objection when Maduro of Venezuela accused Guyana's president of being a puppet of the United States and
Yeah.
ExxonMobil. But here's the big issue, Dr. Adams. The contract as it is, I suppose, is what we have to live with until better can be done.
Yes.
So, from production commencement to recently, oil revenues total in the region of $29.2 billion. Guyana got $4.2 billion out of that, and expenses and Exxon got $25 billion. Now, inside, and ladies and gentlemen, this is what Guyana has benefited from. This is the money that is available to us as citizens of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Instead, a lot of this $4.2 billion has been put towards public infrastructure projects where the 1% of the population benefits, while the 99% struggles fighting to survive in a difficult set of circumstances with spiraling out of control, cost of living. The teachers are out there protesting for a living wage. The public servants continue to have their backs broken by really, really dire economic circumstances and low wages, high cost of living. Is there not enough in that 4.2 billion US dollars to pay our teachers, to pay our public servants, to carve out a package for developmental issues surrounding citizens of this country in the form of direct money transfers to people, to citizens of this country, even though, as you said, we're not getting the best deal we can this money not be used for that purpose instead of going into public infrastructure where 25% of a national budget or 50% of the infrastructure budget goes to waste?
Yeah, you asking me there? Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No question, Marvin. And again, besides corruption and friends and families and favorites, it has a lot to do with incompetence. How could you? There is no country on this planet. Well, I mean, a country that is interested in development. No country on this planet, United States, Europe, and those countries, that put 58% into infrastructure. First of all, we have no capacity to put that kind of money in the infrastructure. Our budget, right, the last budget reading, 58%, $666 billion went into infrastructure. You know how much went in? The teachers ended up with what, 29 billion or something of the sort. And what we found in the United States in 2000 and when we had the world economic crisis, and of course, I worked at the highest level of the U.S. government, and we had to adjust to the changing times in the world to keep America competitive. And one of the things that we learned from that economic crisis was that the most important thing to attract foreign direct investment is education, and a good education system. We used to think it's infrastructure in the past. Infrastructure is even number 3 on the list after education, and after following the rule of law is number 2, believe it or not. And they're not following the rule of law, obviously. They pushed education aside, and now, and the only reason why infrastructure is up there is to feed and fill the pockets of that 1%. Here we are. We've got teachers, Marvin. We've got teachers making $90,000 and $98,000 per month. How the hell could they survive? Do you know that Guyana, which is the richest country on the planet, forget about the richest in the Caribbean, Guyana is paying the lowest salaries for teachers in the whole of Caribbean. Grenada, I think Grenada or Antigua is paying more than double to their teachers. Trinidad is about double, and other countries are almost triple. So that's what we have here. It's for their friends and family, and for direct transfer to the public. We have Morvin. We have half of our population is living in poverty in the richest nation on the planet. Half of our population is living on $5 per
or
day
less, or
in,
less.
or less in the richest country on the planet. However, if you fly into Guyana and you drive along these bank roads, you would never believe that, because you see the nice fancy mansions. Or if you go to Pradoville, you would never see, you would never believe that. But going to look at success. You're going to Mecca and they do not want the poor people to be in their sights. The president, the vice president himself has mentioned, I counted it at least 3 times in his press conferences, that all of the opposition wants to do is to take the money and feed the people. He said that 3 times more when I counted them in one press conference, and he repeated it in another press conference. All the opposition wants to do is feed the people. That tells you what the priority is. This government, the priority is not, they want the poor folks to be out of their sight. They want these bright, shiny objects with road and nice, fancy building. And when it comes to transfer of money to the people who own this, it's their patrimony. It doesn't matter to them. It's just to get their friends, family, and favorites rich, and to hell with the poor. They don't even want to feed them. How fundamental could a human being, their mind be, by saying the first thing we should do is feed the people? How fundamental could that be? They're doing the opposite.
It's perhaps not as difficult to understand if you recognize that the sitting president comes from a home where both his parents were teachers, and he heads a government that is refusing to pay teachers a living wage. So, the other stuff become easier to understand in these circumstances. Rather unfortunate, but true. I want to shift our conversation, Dr. Adams, to the whole question of oil production and the associated risks. Now, there's production there. The information flowing suggests extraction of somewhere in the region of 445,000 barrels per day. There appears to be no government of Guyana presence, least to mention supervision, of what's happening out there offshore. But we seem to be taking this information for granted. The information, that's the official information. You had identified that in the environmental impact assessment document, there's a safety limit of 620,000 barrels per day, I believe you had mentioned at another place. And that's the safety limit. But that the extraction is really more than the official 645,000 barrels declared. What are the risks, A, of government not being involved in what's happening offshore Guyana? And what are the risks associated with extracting beyond that safety limit set in the EIA?
Well, going back to an earlier question, Morvin, about independence, and again, and about turning what was put in place by LFS Bornum and even the previous government in terms of making people feel that we are indeed independent. When at the EPA, while I was at the EPA, and I know the Department of Energy was doing something similar, we established, to do exactly what you're saying, monitoring is the key. And I'm not talking about this silly thing about satellite monitoring. But anyway, that's what Exxon wants. But anyway, so I went to the World Bank, and the World Bank gave us $1 million to set up an environmental an EPA petroleum unit. We had the organization chart and everything in place, and we were going to go recruit high-powered staff, equal to or even better than the contractor, meaning Exxon folks on board. We set up a 36-member unit where high-powered petroleum engineers with at least 5 to 10 years of experience to be on those ships 24/7 to see everything that is going on, to make sure that they're following procedures to reduce the risk of an oil spill, to make sure that that meter is running correctly. And as soon as I left, and Exxon, here again, I'm getting back to us not understanding the power that we have, because Exxon, they're not could have told me that we couldn't do that. They agreed to it. We were arranging for living quarters for the folks on board. And as soon as I was removed, they got rid of it. They got rid of it. So we have no monitoring capability on board those ships. So we don't know what the heck is going on. And then on top, not only did they get rid of that, the environmental impact assessment, which is what we call the Bible of any construction or industry of this nature. What the EIA does, is the only document that does the thorough analysis it identifies all of the risk, and it comes up with ways of mitigating those risks and making serious decisions. And one of the things that EIA says, let's say for Liza 1, for example, is that thou shalt not exceed the safe operating limit of 120,000 barrels per day. As a matter of fact, the EIA even goes further because it's such a sacred document. By the way, that document takes sometimes years to develop, depending on the risk that is looking at and the technical aspect of it. And it goes through, not only does it go through internal technical by the contractor and by the government reviews and change, it goes through the entire public. So any export out there, then it has to go through the public and all the impacted parties. So the entire world get an opportunity to have an input on that document, and every question has to be identified. Anyway, so after all of that, that document says 120,000 barrels per day in the Liza 1 is the safe operating limit. Normally what you do, you even in your actual operating limit, which we call an internal control, you cut it back by 20%, so you do not even get close to that limit. Well, in that same EIA says that the operating limit shall be 100,000 barrels per day. So you got that cushion. If something happens, you've got a 20,000 barrels per day cushion, so you could never approach it. Do you know what they're operating that platform at? 163,000 barrels per day. 106 through greed. When the coalition was there and when I was at EPA, their limit was 100,000 barrels per day. So they're 60% above the operating limit and about 33% above the safe operating limit. So what they're doing here now, Mervyn, they're putting not only Guyana's waters and it would wipe out all kinds of industry. Not only are they putting Guyana at risk, they're putting the entire Caribbean at risk. So they're increasing the risk to the Caribbean, because if we get an oil spill, it's going to wash away Trinidad, for example, from coast to coast, from the entire eastern shore, from north to south. And listen to this, Mervyn, it will also, Venezuelan coast will be one of the first to go. So if you want to give Maduro an excuse to do what he wants to do, wash away his coast with oil. So the rest of the Caribbean, and then of course fishing, tourism would be wiped out completely. And on the backside of it, Mervyn, the coalition imposed what is called an unlimited parent company guarantee to cover a spill. They have,
which is where I want us to go in some detail, but I must correct myself before we go there because I think I said 620 barrels per day, which is really should be, I should have said 100,
on that one
120.
on that one production, but but you were close. The total that we're producing on
Right.
the is like 650,000 barrels per day. But this one, yeah, Lisa one is 120,000, but they're doing 160 instead of 120.
There you go. So I want to now zero in on this business of unlimited parent guarantee. Now, Jagdio is contending that this thing will carry a tremendous cost. You have argued that that is a falsity. That is, well, a blatant lie. Um, I want to ask you to explore, well, first of all, do two things for us. Tell us exactly what is meant by unlimited parent guarantee and what it'll cost. And secondly, walk us through the possibilities of an oil spill beyond the discussion that we had a moment ago. What, for example, can we do to mitigate and to free Guyana of any liability as a state actor in the event of such a spill? Could a parent guarantee between Exxon and CARICOM as a whole, or Exxon and individual CARICOM states which are vulnerable to a spill happening in Guyana's waters, would that be a good mitigating measure? Would it be useful? And what would that cost the investor?
Yes, when the government when the coalition came into government after 23 years of a disastrous EPA, we did not have an EPA, Morgan, and that's a separate show. That
Yes, definitely.
we did not have an EPA when the coalition arrived, and that was the reason why I had retired from my job in the United States, and I was doing voluntary work in Guyana, as many know. And I was really asked to really come and resuscitate the EPA and advise on the oil and gas. So when we arrived there, the first permit that Lisa 1 had already been signed. So when the Lisa 2 permit came to me, the first thing that jumped out at me was I said, if we have a spill, who's going to cover it? Exxon said, well, the contract says that they could be self-insured. Well, when I looked, I said, who's going to be self-insured? Exxon is not signing. Here's the other thing that I want our listeners to listen to very carefully, Mervyn. Exxon's name is not on any official document. Exxon has no connection to the permits and that oil operation. What Exxon did, like it's legal that other big companies do, in order to insulate themselves from liability if something happens, they go and they set up what is called a subsidiary of this, which is a limited liability company, an LLC. So if something happens, so this LLC is Exxon Mobil Guyana Limited. If something happens, their name is on every single document, so they're the ones who are held liable according to the contract. Except that this limited liability company that they set up has no assets to cover all the assets that they're getting now. Now they're newly formed, so they hadn't produced a barrel of oil, so they have no assets, and all the assets that they're putting together is based. It belongs to the government of Ghana. It says that in the contract. So I looked at the guy in the eyes and I said, "You're telling me that EMGL will be covering all of these liabilities? You have no assets." So he said, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "The only thing I want you to do is go and we need a parent company guarantee, meaning that Exxon is the parent company, and you need to Exxon and their partners, Synop and Hess, need to join together and say, here, we're going to provide the government of Guyana with a letter, Mervyn, with a letter of guarantee." Had nothing to do with this stupidness about with what Nandlal and Jagdio and dotted in this foolishness. I don't know if it's due ignorance or they know exactly what they're doing. It doesn't cost a single dime. It's a letter of guarantee to say over and above an insurance. Of course, they went out there and they claim that they've got this $600 million in insurance. Well, that's a drop in the ocean, okay? Because the Macondo spill in the Gulf cost, guess what? 145 billion US dollars. So don't come to me with your $600 million. As a matter of fact, I told him, I said, I don't care even if it's $1 insurance you come out there and get. It doesn't matter to us. All I want in that parent company guarantee is to say that anything over and above that insurance has to be covered by the parent companies. The language was written into the permit when we left office. So we had fixed that problem. EMGL signed off it, the Exxon, Sunup, and Hess. Of course, they were working out how they're going to share that liability. And I told them until I get that letter of guarantee, even though it's already in the permit, so it's law. However, they said, well, okay, give us an opportunity to put together this letter that costs nobody anything in terms of how we're going to share that guarantee. And of course, you guys have to approve it. So we had our lawyers working with them, and we were at the final draft of that letter. They were meeting with us all the time. The final draft of that letter, because when the Payara came up, I said, I'm not signing, you're not going to get the Payara permit unless I get my guarantee, and you're not going to start up the Lisa 2 unless we get that parent company. Since in August of 2020, Mervyn, guess what they did? We were close to getting that letter. Exxon and them agreed. They sent me on leave, and guess what else they did? They got rid of the attorney, the EPA attorney was working it. They got rid of him. They went and they signed off on the Payara permit. They left the language in there. They stupidly they left the language in there, and then they signed off, and they said, to hell with you guys, to hell with this parent company guarantee. And that was what caused the two citizens to file a lawsuit. That caused Judge Kissoon to rule overwhelmingly in favor of what we had in there in the first place. And of course, the government, unbelievably, has joined now with Exxon to appeal that case. So we go back to this whole thing about independence. We're moving in the reverse direction in terms of independence. Here we are supposed to be, having an attorney general and president and vice president who's supposed to be working with the people in an independent fashion, but we're joining with our exploiters to come in against the people. That is not independence. It's the opposite of independence.
Now, there's a question here that that raises a lot of concern. The government of Guyana, today's government of Guyana, agrees that with Exxon that there should be no mandatory parent company guarantee. But you at the EPA had reason to prosecute SO for a fine as low as $500 US.
Yep.
Would such a company be willing to go into its coffers to expend money, possibly billions of US dollars, to clean up an oil spill in the Caribbean region? And again, I repeat the second part of the last question. Would it be useful to have parent company guarantees signed between the investor and CARICOM states as a mitigating measure against?
Right. Hey, Marvin, the best thing, I don't know if it's the best or if it matters, but the best thing that is happening to us, these people are showing us who they are. Okay? They're showing us on a daily basis who they are, and also along with the government. Because here we are, the government is colluding with them against its own people to enhance the risk of an oil spill by producing above the safe operating limit. But on the backside, there's no coverage for it if something happened. Because the only consequence of this is, of course, bankrupting Guyana and bankrupting the rest, the rest of our Caribbean. Now, to answer your last question, um, when we had the spill in Tobago, when we had the spill in, by the way, that spill in Tobago was about 35,000 barrels, a one-time spill, 35,000 barrels. The guy ran up
Less
against.
less than 1 day's production.
You talk about a fraction. A
Yeah.
fraction. We will be producing 1.5 million barrels a day. 1.5 million barrels a day. So here it is, a one-time traversing of a ship with 35,000 barrels per day. Every single day, we will have, or every 2 days, we will have 3 ships with 1 million barrels a day going
Mm.
through that Caribbean. Every 2 days, we will have 3 ships when we get up to 1.5 million
Yeah.
barrels per day. So we are increasing the risk of something happen several fold, because as an engineer, we always brag that we can engineer anything, we can do anything to make anything possible. But the one thing we always recognize, we cannot engineer a human being. The human factor. A guy, the captain of a ship, goes out, he had a good party the night before, he falls asleep, he runs run aground on a reef. Those things happen, you can have no control. So that is why you've got to put provision in place. If something happens, we've got to clean up our mess. We do not have that now. One of the things, because I was on several programs in the Caribbean when that spill occurred. And one of the things that I had suggested with the guy who's in charge of training for the big, totally agree with me. And I had been, by the way, I've been advocating that even at the EPA, in terms of the rest of the Caribbean having input to that EIA, environmental impact assessment, because it would, by definition, it's intended for all the impacted parties. And I had said, we're producing out there, we have a potential impact to the whole Caribbean, so get them involved as stakeholders in putting together that EIA. And now, when the spill occurred, when I brought it up again, they totally agree with me that whoever is using that ocean, that sea out there, each country should be getting involved to say, here, Exxon or whoever else is moving oil through there, I want a separate guarantee with you that if something happens to my shore, you're gonna have to be held liable. I cannot afford a spill of multi-billions of dollars. It would run me bankrupt. So it's absolutely, to me, it's necessary. I saw it coming way before when I was at EPA. Now I think when that spill occurred in Trinidad and Tobago, in relative terms, it was a minuscule spill that happened. But I think it happened for a purpose, to awaken the Caribbean, and I hope that these folks get on board. Now that 500, let me tell you, but these are the kinds of things that we look for in this business and any other hazardous business, are these precursors as to how people conduct their business. So all of this talk about even Jagdio, they don't even have, Exxon doesn't even have to do it anymore. Jagdio is their biggest advocate. You would swear he and Nandalal, I think Nandalal is their attorney general instead of the people's attorney general, because they're the biggest spokespeople. You don't hear Exxon speaking anymore in public. Those guys are now become their parrot. So when you say, well, okay, they're a safe operating company, that's not what their record reflects around the world. They've got lawsuits all over the darn world for these type of, where they don't want to pay up for when they have things such as spill. They've been sued in several countries, in Nigeria, even in the United States, for false reporting of information to the governments. So it's not a case where these people are kaya boys and you can trust them. You cannot trust them. So what happened there was, when I was at EPA, they had 6 small spills. But so when I went after them in court, they were public opinion. Well, those are just small spills. You shouldn't be going after that. It's the way that they operate. Those are precursors for bigger things to come. And you know what they were, Mervyn? When you go buy like an electric iron or any appliance, it has a white tag that says a caution tag. The hoses that they were using for subsea operation, it says with a big white tag, it says you must inspect these hoses before use. In the permits, in their procedures, they say that they repeat that in their procedure. They had 6 cases of leaks because they did not follow that simple procedure of inspecting those hoses. So the forestry, I let them off the hook and we gave them a warning. Even though we gave them that warning, do you know they went back and had 3 more within that same year? So we decided that we're going to take them to court. The law only allowed us a maximum fine of $500, but it wasn't about the $500. It was to set it, to make sure that they understood the seriousness of it. They, here again, when they got rid of me and they got rid of the attorney who was prosecuting at the EPA, they just dismissed the case. So if Exxon is refusing to pay a paltry fine of $500, you can see why they will not pay any, like $145 billion of any spill. Let me give the public another situation. Shell Oil, operating in Nigeria, had a whole bunch of spills. Nigerian citizens sued them for the spills. The case was heard in London. Do you know what was Shell's defense? Shell's defense, folks, was that I had nothing to do with it. It was my subsidiary who was operating. So that was their defense. So we shouldn't wait. If we got what they say about candle, you can't wait till when you can see it daytime, don't wait till nighttime for light a candle for see it.
Yeah.
So that's what we have here. It's not a case where these things are not in the open. We see what is happening. Those are the kinds of things we should expect from it. And this government is defending them.
Dr. Adams, we fast running out of time.
Yeah.
I wanted to explore 2 other questions, but I limited one. Well, I'm limited to one by time.
That's okay.
Um,
I might gotta come back, Mervyn.
yeah, you must in 5 or 6 minutes maximum. What are your views on the establishment of a national oil company? And secondly, do you see Guyana's foreign policy extending to petroleum and petroleum-related arrangements with the rest of CARICOM through the possibility of a national oil company?
Absolutely. And it's not even, as a matter of fact, we've already started setting up, our standing, not only Caribbean, but within the world. We're going to be one of the biggest producers of oil throughout the world. And this, people like the United States, we've got a Secretary of State and all these folks are visiting us. They never did this before. Oil. So oil is power. Oil is power. And regardless of, we all are big advocates of renewable energy, and we need to pursue that. But I remember even I had egg on my face. And I remember in a conference in Puerto Rico, I stood up there and I, with all this science, said that we're going to get peak oil by 2015. And of course, that never happened because of technology that was able to discover new oil and produce more oil than we ever thought. So we're going to have oil around for a very long time. And as long as it remains competitive in cost, it's going to be around. So Guyana has the power, it has the leverage without question. We need to develop an oil company. And in addition to the power that an oil company brings, it brings the technical expertise. And on top of that, when oil is gone, let's say from Guyana, it lasts for 20 years, and oil will still be around in the rest of the world because of, like in the Middle East, they don't have anything else. So when that is gone, our oil company now can go out and compete for development work in other countries. Like Petrobras from Brazil, their national oil company does. They compete just with Exxon and everybody else around the world to bring back revenue into the country. So it's setting up another business entity for the people of Guyana. And it's not only to produce oil within Guyana, but without question, I think it's a powerful. And by the way, that also could be paid out of, and there's a soft carry and a hard carry. There are different methods of doing it without costing the government again any kind of money. The Exxon themselves, could carry the company, carry the expense over a period of time, and we can even pay them back, or we don't pay them back. There are all kinds of arrangements that could be worked as part of a new contract. Yeah, so
Mhm.
I think it's one of the most important things that we should be focusing on. It wouldn't happen overnight, but I think it's something that we have to aspire to, because it would be beneficial to us right now and after all is done in Guyana.
2 minutes, maximum three. What is your position regarding Gail Teixeira's assertion publicly about your involvement in this contract arrangement? And do you see yourself going to legal proceedings to clear your name and image in that regard?
Absolutely, Marvin. These folks have to be held accountable. They believe that they're above the law, and they intimidate Guyanese, and they know that most Guyanese, especially if you live in country, there's going to be retribution if you go after them to hold them accountable. Without question, we're pursuing legal action, and so it's in the pipeline, and they must be held accountable. You cannot go slandering besides myself, slandering people's name like that, to say that I hid $18 million from the government, that was received as a signing bonus, and I signed the contract. I mean, that's blatant slander. It's a lie, and I'm not going to let her get away with it.
Was she given an opportunity? Did you offer her an opportunity to come
Absolutely.
clean and apologize?
Absolutely. We sent My lawyer sent her a letter to ask her to apologize, and she never even acknowledged receiving the letter. As a matter of fact, the letter was undelivered, and when she was asked about it, she claimed that she never received it. Well, so she was given an opportunity, and decided to ignore it. So we're gonna pursue legal action.
Dr. Adams, you must grant us the privilege of having your presence here on Nation Watch again in the not too distant future to, you know, discuss further this matter of oil and gas and the impact on the lives and livelihood of Guyanese, and getting the best out of what is available in the best interest of the people of this country. I want to thank you very much for coming on Nation Watch and for clearing up these issues. There are other issues that require clarity and will require time as well. Um, so, your closing remarks on this particular program, and maybe your commitment upfront to coming again.
Well, absolutely, more right. As you know, I've been kept busy, but it's in a good way. I enjoy it, because I was given the opportunity. I grew up in one of the poorest communities in Guyana. Had it not been for that community that held my hands and raised me, which is a Christian Borg, Linden, by the way, where they said that the only thing that we had of any value was the cemetery. But anyway, so it was because of that grounding that I got from that poor community. Had I not been raised by that poor village, I would not have been where I am. So it's my turn to give back. So the reason why I come on these programs is because, you know, I've been afforded that opportunity, and it's my turn to give back to the folks, to let them know what the facts are, because we've been bombarded by this government. Their only modus operandi is to propagandize everything that's happening in the oil and gas industry. And since I've been blessed with the knowledge, and exposure, it is my duty, an obligation to provide the facts to our people of Guyana. So I'm always willing, anytime, just let me know, Morphine, and I will make myself available for your show anytime.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent Adams, former head of the Environmental Protection Agency, petroleum expert, a real one, unlike some others that are out there. Thank you for your time, sir, and I wish you well for today and every other day coming, and happy independence to you. And ladies and gentlemen, we wish to remind you that today is the day today is bingo at Congress Place. We start at 2 p.m. and all are invited. Come down to Congress Place. The place is already set up. There maybe more than 100 tables set up out there waiting for you. Come down, interact with each other, support the People's National Congress Reforms fundraising event, Bingo 2024. Happy Independence to you all. God bless you until we meet again next Sunday for another edition of Nation Watch.